The Trump administration just dropped a price tag on foreign work permits. And it's a price tag that's higher than most people's annual salary. And obviously, immediately, the media, big tech, and the professional immigration lobby, big immigration, have started foaming at the mouth about it. Now, I want to be clear on what it's targeting H-1B visas. And I want to be clear on what those actually are up front. Because it's not about green cards. It's not about citizenship. H-1Bs are a temporary work permit. They're supposed to let highly skilled foreign workers, think engineers, computer sciences, PhDs, it's supposed to let those types come in and fill a job for a set period of time. That's the sales pitch for H-1B visas. The problem is that's not how they've played out in reality. In reality, the H-1B program has been one of the biggest corporate scams we've ever seen running in plain sight. Companies will claim that there's a shortage of American talent. So they'll say, we have no choice but to bring in workers from overseas. But the data shows that's simply not the case. There's no shortage whatsoever. What there is a shortage of companies willing to pay Americans what they're worth. So instead of hiring an American at a fair wage, corporations will bring in a H-1B worker, pay them less, far less, and then pat themselves on the back for keeping America competitive. It's wage suppression is what it is. And they've wrapped it up in this fancy Silicon Valley marketing. H-1Bs don't just fill jobs. They replace Americans. Disney literally laid off hundreds of American IT workers a few years ago and then forced those same Americans to train their H-1B replacements before they could collect their severance pay. It's called corporate outsourcing, and it's happening right inside of our borders. So President Donald Trump has slapped a yearly $100,000 fee on each visa. So what does that do? Well, it flips the incentive structure on its head. Now, when a company's deciding between hiring an American or importing someone from overseas, that cost difference is now massive. You want to save money now, hire an American. You want to go the H-1B route, fine. But you pay six figures up front to the government. Suddenly, your cheap labor isn't cheap anymore. Now, the critics are screaming that this is anti-immigrant, and they're wrong. It's not anti-immigrant, it's pro-worker, pro-American worker. Because we're talking about a program that has been used to flood the market with cheaper alternatives to citizens. And the only people winning in that equation are the corporations. The H-1B worker is locked into their employer. They don't have the freedom to move jobs without risking deportation. The American worker gets undercut and the corporation cashes in. And that's the scam. Now, Democrats obviously hate this fee because their donor base is Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley lives off of H-1Bs. Republicans on the, let's call it the Chamber of Commerce side, they also hate it because they see labor as just another cost line on a spreadsheet. But Donald Trump is betting that voters, especially middle class voters who've seen jobs dry up or wages stagnate, he's betting that they don't care about Google's profit margins. They care about fairness. They care about being able to compete for jobs without some corporation gaming the system. And you know what? That bet's going to pay off, because normal people hear $100,000 fee for a foreign work visa and they don't freak out. They're like me. They shrug and say, well, good. It's about time somebody stood up for us. The US government has treated its own citizens as second class in the job market for decades. Tax breaks for outsourcing, incentives for illegal labor, programs like H-1B that let companies bring in workers specifically to undercut wages. And when Americans have complained, they've been labeled as lazy, unqualified, xenophobic. Well, this $100,000 fee is a big old middle finger to that entire narrative. If you want to import cheap labor, fine, pay for it. And it's not a token processing fee, not some $2,000 expense that a Fortune 500 company can wipe off without, can write off or whatever without blinking. No, it's a fee so high that it forces the company to seriously consider, do we really need to replace an American here? Or is this simply about squeezing more profit out of the system? Not surprisingly, the companies crying the loudest right now are the ones with billions in cash reserves, Google, Meta, Microsoft. These are people that spend more than $100,000 on catered lunches. They're not mad about the fee because they can't afford it. They're mad because it kills their little wage fixing scheme. That's why, to me, this policy matters. For decades, the default has been to bring in cheap labor, squeeze the middle class, ship jobs overseas, and then call yourself pro-business. And Trump just said, no, the default is Americans first. You want to go around that? You have to pay up. This isn't a ban. It's not anti-immigration. It's a price tag. If these jobs are truly so critical that only a foreign worker can fill them, fine. But the company pays for that. But if the job can be done by an American, guess who's suddenly more attractive in the hiring pool? This is exactly what people mean when they talk about putting America first. It's exactly what President Trump meant when he said America first. It wasn't just a slogan. It wasn't just stump speeches. This was a real policy that shifts the balance of power away from corporations and back towards the citizens who built this country. It is a brilliant move that will save American jobs. And I got to tell you, Danielle, it is in stark contrast to what the British are planning on doing as their effort to protect British jobs. Keir Starmer, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, has announced a new national digital ID scheme, the so-called BritCard, what they're calling it. The government's pitch is it's a simple pitch. By the end of this parliament, the end of which ends in 2029, everyone in the UK, every citizen, every legal resident will need to get this digital ID. The first mandatory use case will be proving your right to work. Employers won't be allowed anymore to simply check your existing IDs, your passport, your birth certificate. Those aren't going to be good enough for this. They're not going to be able to trust the existing documents or systems. They'll have to scan your BritCard through an official government app. Every time that you apply for a job, that verification will be logged and cross-checked with tax and employment databases. A permanent record of your working life will then be monitored by the state. Starmer says that this will solve illegal immigration. His line is that if you come to the UK illegally, you won't be able to work. Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. That's their official line, that everybody has to get this digital ID to solve the immigration crisis that the Labour Party created, mind you.
Right.
But you'll need to get it to solve it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. They're telling people that the BritCard, they're telling people that the BritCard will make their lives easier. It'll make life easier, faster, more secure, right? You'll use it for welfare, for childcare, driver's licenses, taxes. They say it'll end discrimination. It will, listen, I don't know how they get to this point, but this is what they're claiming. It will end discrimination. It'll solve immigration. It'll end discrimination. It will protect privacy. And it'll even prevent another Windrush scandal by giving people a unchallengeable proof of their legal status. Windrush was back in the 80s when 83 people were wrongly deported. They say wrongly deported, but whatever. It was a big old scandal of some what I call illegals getting deported. But they,
is that really what it was?
You know how the courts treat that.
Right.
That's the story they're selling. That's what they're trying, or that's how they're trying to sell this to the British public. But let's break down what this really is. It's the British government resurrecting an idea that has been rejected over and over again throughout their history. And now they're just dressing it up with 21st century tech and pretending that it's progress. The BritCard didn't just fall out of the sky, right? It was cooked up by a labor think tank. Labor Together is what it's called. They're a think tank stacked with socialist allies of the Labor Party. They put out a policy paper which spelled it out completely. A universal, mandatory digital credential stored on your smartphone, linked to your job, your landlord, your taxes, every aspect of your existence will be linked to this. Every time your ID is scanned, the metadata goes to the Home Office. They literally bragged that this would let the government cross-check with PAYE, pay-as-you-earn records, to target what they call non-compliant employers. In other words, policing the national insurance, policing the national insurance structure, policing the tax infrastructure. And I get that that's government's job, but they're talking about a remarkably intrusive way to do it. In other words, really, you're not just proving who you are, you're feeding a massive surveillance machine, is what it boils down to. Now, this isn't new for Britain. They've tried it before. let's go back in history. ID cards were forced on the population during World War II. The public absolutely hated them. By 1952, they were scrapped after a true British hero, a dry cleaner named Harry Wilcock. He refused to show his papers, Danielle. And of course, the authorities dragged him into court and he won, and ID cards were thrown out there. Thank you, Harry. People were.
Is that really what happened?
Yep, that's absolutely what happened. People were a lot braver back in 1952. Jump forward to Tony Blair's years in the 2000s, and Labor. And again, the common denominator here is the Labor Party, and the Labor Party are the socialists, the communists, and they will tell you that. They don't hide behind a cloak like the socialists in America do, or used to. I mean, now you've got Bernie Sanders and AOC that proudly call themselves socialists. The Labor Party have been calling themselves socialists and communists for decades. They tried again in the 2000s under Blair with biometric ID cards linked to a national database. They said that it would, here's how they sold it back then. It would allow people to report things such as potholes in the streets and missed garbage collections, missed bin collections, they would say in England. They didn't advertise all the pesky tracking that it would do, but still, the people knew better. That scheme collapsed under its own authoritarian weight. It was going to be too expensive, too intrusive, and it was, honestly, it was too despised. The people despised it. The coalition government back then scrapped it, and that was a coalition of Labor and the actual party name, the Social and Liberal Democrats. Again, they don't hide from what they are either. That coalition government scrapped the idea in 2010. Now, in comes Starmer, who I said, by the way, won't last 2 years as prime minister. You remember?
Right.
He's just over a year. He's just over a year, and he's not going to survive this. I predict within 3 months there will be a new prime minister in the UK. There will be a vote of no confidence, and Starmer will be yanked. But anyway, here he comes, repackaging the same idea, but this time with an app. And he's betting that people won't care now because everyone's used to QR codes and apps on their smartphones now, right? So he's hoping that it'll be able to fly. Oh, yeah, it's just another app on your smartphone.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The British people actually do care. And the backlash has been, I mean, ferocious, quite frankly. And interestingly enough, bipartisan. Start with the Conservatives, the Tories. Kemi Badenoch of the Conservatives dismissed it as a desperate gimmick that won't stop the boats from coming over, right? Won't do anything to stem immigration. And remember, that's Starmer's main selling point, is that it will solve immigration. He also says that it will solve discrimination and all that bollocks, but whatever. His main point is that it will solve illegal immigration. Victoria Collins of the Liberal Democrats, her concerns are a bit different to the Tories, but she's warning that it will harm what she's calling the digitally excluded. I'm guessing that's people without cell phones. Nigel Farage of Reform, we all know Nigel. We love Nigel here. He said it will be used to control ordinary citizens. He nailed it on the head. And the Greens, the Green Party called it authoritarian. Yes, the Greens, the literal communist party.
Oh my God. They're actual communists.
They are, the Green Party in the UK are actual communists.
And they know they're communists.
They advertise the fact that they are communists.
Yeah.
They called it authoritarian. When the communists
Wow.
come
Hang
out.
on, did they say that like it was a bad thing, or were they like,
Oh,
"Dude,
well,
this
I
is
don't know. I don't, yeah, this is
authoritarian." Okay.
dude,
Right. Right.
authoritarianism.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Yes. Right.
anyway, the communists have called it authoritarian. The Scottish and the Welsh are pissed off because of the name BritCard. They say it's an insult to their national identities. Sinn Féin, the party of the IRA, say
Yeah, it
that it
is.
actually violates the Good Friday Agreement, which it likely does because again, part of the Good Friday Agreement is no more surveillance state in Northern Ireland. Well,
Right.
what is this if not a massive surveillance state? And even
Right.
Labour MPs, even Starmer's own MPs, who are like our congressmen, are breaking with their own leader and refusing to back the plan. Of course, the civil liberties groups are out there mobiling. Big Brother Watch, one called Liberty, just Liberty. The name is on the tin.
I mean, yeah.
The Runnymede Trust, the Open Rights Group, they've all joined together to send a joint letter to Starmer demanding that he scrap the scheme. And their warning is a blunt one. This is the architecture of a surveillance state. They say it's the birth of a checkpoint society. It's the end of Britain as a country where you can walk around free without having to constantly prove your identity to the government. And they're right. The critics are right. Because once you build the infrastructure, it'll never stay limited to its original purpose. Today, they say it's just for jobs, right? Tomorrow, though, it'll be for renting an apartment. Then it's for going to the doctor or opening a bank account or buying a pint or simply getting on a bus. That's how function creep works. The Tony Blair Institute, which is like the Obama Foundation, the Tony Blair Institute has already openly called for this BritCard system to be expanded across all public services. Once you're in forever.
Right.
And if anyone thinks that the government, listen, the UK government's no better than ours. If you think it can be trusted to manage this, well, let me tell you, this is the same government that lost millions of child benefit records back in 2007. During the peak of a underage child grooming scheme, they lost millions of child benefit records in 2007. Don't know who they went to, but what else would a child grooming ring want more than a list of names and addresses of a bunch of kids living in poverty? It's the same government that leaked data on Afghan refugee asylum applicants that had aided American and British forces during the war. The government leaked their names to the Taliban.
Did they really?
Yeah. It's the same government whose legal aid agency was hacked just this year. And Keir Starmer wants you to trust these people running a single digital key to your entire life. Security experts are calling it a honeypot for hackers, obviously.
Right.
And then there's the philosophical point, which is probably the most important. A mandatory digital ID changes the entire relationship between a citizen and the state. Your life is presumed to be your own, right? You don't need You don't need permission to exist. But under a digital ID regime, everything you do ends up becoming conditional on government approval. You're living on a license. Your freedom is contingent on a government's app. And once people get used to that, if people get used to that, freedom is no longer freedom. It becomes state-approved activity. And we've seen this happen. Estonia has a digital ID system that integrates everything from voting to prescriptions. India has the Aadhaar, I think they call it. Apparently, that's the largest biometric ID system in human history. China has its system, but it's gone even further by weaving their digital ID into a social credit system that we've talked about here before.
Right.
That controls where you can travel, what you can buy. It even determines whether your children can go to school. Now, these systems are always pitched as modernization, as progress, as a convenience to the citizen, and yet they always end up getting used as tools of control. BritCard isn't just about Great Britain. It's part of the same, this same global trend, the same agenda, the same dream. We hear it from every time, who's that G9 guy? The globalist guy. What's his name? The German Nazi fella. I say Nazi fella because his family aided and abetted the Nazis.
Because they were actual Nazis.
Yeah. Oh, what's his? But whatever. It's the same globalist dream that we hear of from them. They want every citizen in the West tethered to a digital credential, right? They want to know where you are, what you're doing, what you're spending, what you're saying, and who you're saying it to. They want your entire life reduced down to a QR code. And this is where America needs to pay attention. Because if Britain does this, the left, and let's not forget, the left in Britain and the left in America work hand in hand. They are mates. They do cross training with each other. They do employee swaps with each other. But if the left in Britain does it, the left in this country will try to follow them. They'll tell you it's about stopping illegal immigration, and who doesn't want to do that? They'll tell you it's about preventing identity theft or about streamlining health care. Maybe they'll try to link it to voting. Maybe they'll
That's
tie
what
it.
they'll do.
Yeah.
They'll link it to healthcare and homelessness.
Yes. Yeah. Then they'll try to link it to voting, to gun purchases, right? Here, they'll try to bundle it with a central bank digital currency so that your money and your identity are one and the same. However they package it, though, the goal is the same: total control. Klaus Schwab, thank you. They've talked about it openly, every single aspect of it. And we've already had test runs. Let's not forget vaccine passports during COVID. QR codes to get into restaurants and concerts and stadiums, right? That's part of a centralized identification system. And don't forget how fast those have been normalized.
Yep. That's
how quickly a digital ID system could be sold to Americans and rolled out here. And first, initially, it's voluntary. Then it becomes highly recommended. And then it's required if you want to fly or work or buy groceries. Before you know it, you're living in a digital panopticon, and the only way out is to comply. This isn't some paranoid fantasy. This is a blueprint. They've been telling us about it for decades. It's written down in policy papers. It's praised by globalist organizations. It's being built in Britain right now. And the people pushing it are the same people who preach to us about equity, sustainability, diversity, all of the globalist buzzwords. They wrap their authoritarianism in the language of compassion. But underneath that wrapping, underneath that language, it's the same thing. Control. So here's my warning for America. If you want to keep your freedom, if you want freedom to actually be freedom and not simply permission, we cannot let a digital ID take root in America, not in any form. I'm opposed to them for concerts and for getting into stadiums. Not in any form, but especially not for jobs, not for healthcare. The E-Verify system, I get that, and I know some people are going to throw that out there. The E-Verify system is different. That is on your employer to verify your identity, not the government.
Right.
That's on your employer to do. But not for jobs, not for healthcare, not for voting, not for banking, and not for going to the bar and buying yourself a Budweiser, because that is ultimately where it leads. And once the infrastructure exists, it'll never go away. Right. Once the system, what did we hear about metadata collection? Oh, we stopped doing it. No, they didn't. They're still doing it to this day. Once the system is in place, it'll only grow. And once people get used to it, I mean, our freedom as we know it today is finished. Right. It's over. The BritCard, it's not about protecting Britain. It's about controlling Britain. And if we're not careful, it'll be about controlling us. That's what they want.